Dear students, in this module, we will discuss and learn about various aspects of research design. The topics to be covered here are meaning and importance of research design, characteristics, functions and objectives of research design, features of a good research design, various concepts related to research design and advantages of research design. We will try to learn first about the research design meaning and importance. In simple words, the research design is a roadmap that the researcher is going to take up during her or his research journey in order to find answers to the research questions raised for investigation as validly, accurately and economically as possible. According to Selledge et al., a research design is the statement of conditions for collection and analysis of data in the manner that aims to combine relevance to the research purpose with economy in procedure. In the words of P.V. Young, a research design is the logical and systematic planning and directing a piece of research. Taking into consideration all these definitions, it can be said that research design is a plan through which the researcher takes decisions regarding what study design he or she proposes to study, who will be the respondents, how they are going to be selected, what information is going to be collected and with what type of instruments, as well as what techniques or statistical tools are going to be applied to analyze the data so as to get and communicate accurate and reliable results to those concerned. Coming to the characteristics and functions of research design, in the words of Kothari, the characteristics of research design are a clear statement of the research problem, procedures and techniques to be used for gathering information, the population to be studied and methods to be used in processing and analysis of data. Now, we would like to discuss about major objectives of research design. As all you know that research design is needed to conduct the research most effectively and to achieve maximum output at minimum cost. It is very much essential to test the research hypothesis and also to control variance. It serves as a series of guideposts to keep the researcher and the research going in the right direction. It is useful to prepare an advanced plan for collecting and analyzing the information, keeping in view the objectives and hypothesis of the research and the availability of research staff for assistance, money and time. It provides an opportunity to critically evaluate the study carried out by the researcher after the research is done. Now, we will see the major features of a good research design. In short forms, they are objectivity, reliability, validity, flexibility and generality. In detail, we will discuss number 1, objectivity. In objective research, the researcher generally uses questionnaires in which multiple choice questions, that is close ended, are given therein. The respondents are given freedom to provide their responses to the questions as per their wish, through which subjectivity from the researcher's side is controlled or eliminated to a large extent. Of course, in certain circumstances, the questionnaires consisting of both close-ended and open-ended questions are used in order to arrive at objectivity-oriented results. In such cases, care will be taken to formulate the free response items in an objective manner by giving suitable instructions and guidelines to the observers or field investigators. The second feature of research design is reliability. This means consistency in responses. For example, if a researcher is doing research on population problems in particular and if he or she asked the question about causes for the increase in population and if repeatedly the same answers are given by the respondents, then one can say that there is reliability. The third feature of the research design is validity. It means that measuring tools such as intelligence score, attitude or opinion scales, empowerment of women should be used for which it is made. For instance, if the tool is constructed to measure like empowerment of women, it should measure only the empowerment of women and nothing else, and the responses from the respondents should be centered on empowerment of women only. The fourth feature of research design is flexibility. In flexible designs, the generation of ideas evolve incrementally specific the decision components that are specific during the course of the study. The generation of ideas, designing, data collection, analysis and writing proceed together or in interactions rather than in separate stages. In view of the researcher's inability to fix one or several design elements at the beginning of the research as well as practical constraints faced during the study creates the need for a flexible design. The fifth feature of research design is generality. It is generally expected that whatever findings are derived from a sample, that is research study, should be applicable to the larger group. The research design should serve this purpose. This is because the researcher used to undertake an investigation after careful collection of data from a fitting sample of respondents, analyze the data with appropriate statistical analysis and reach certain findings from which the inferences are drawn. If the same inferences are applicable to a large group from which the sample is selected, generally is said to be prevailing. Now, we will look into briefly the concepts related to research design. There are various concepts starting from dependent and independent variables, extraneous variables, control, confounding relationship, research hypothesis, experiment, experimental units, experimental and control groups, treatments, experimental and non-experimental hypothesis research, manipulation. We will briefly discuss about these concepts. First and foremost one, a variable is a concept that can take on different quantitative values. For example, age, gender, caste, educational status, personal income, fertility, infant mortality, age at marriage, etc. A dependent variable can be defined as a variable which depends upon or is a consequence of other variable. For example, children ever born, infant deaths, family planning adoption, etc. An independent variable can be defined as the variable that is antecedent to the dependent variable. For example, if age at marriage depends on caste, level of education, personal income, then age at marriage is dependent variable, while caste, level of education and personal income are the dependent variables. Another type of variable is extraneous variable. Sometimes the independent variables are unrelated to the study purpose, but they might however affect the dependent variables. These are known as extraneous variables. The effect of extraneous variables on dependent variable is known as experimental error. Generally, it is expected that any research study should be designed in such a way that the effect upon the dependent variable is attributed entirely to the independent variables and not to some extraneous variables. Next concept is control. It means that any research study should be planned in such a way that the influence or effects of extraneous variables have to be reduced or minimized to a large extent. To reduce the effect of extraneous variable, control is used. Control is a technical term which is used while designing the study by reducing the effects of extraneous independent variables. Besides, in experimental studies, the term control refers to the restraining of experimental conditions. There is one more concept called confounded relationship. In case the dependent variable is bound by the influence of the extraneous variable, the relationship between the dependent and independent variables is known to be confounded by extraneous variables. The next major concept in research design is a research hypothesis. A research hypothesis is the prediction or hypothetical relationship between one independent and one dependent variable that needs to be tested by scientific methods. Thus, it is a predictive statement connecting two variables, that is one independent and one dependent. For example, the higher the level of education of woman, the lower would be the level of fertility, that is number of live births. Experiment is another concept in research design. Experiment can be defined as the process of examining the truth of a statistical hypothesis relating to some research problem. Generally, experiments can be two types, such as absolute experiments and comparative experiments. Generally, experiments used to be conducted strictly under lab conditions. However, in social sciences, since such lab conditions are not possible, such experiments are called as quasi-experimental studies. Experimental units is another concept in research design. These represent the predetermined plots or blocks where different types of treatments are used. In the case of social science research, such experimental units are human beings, that is women, children, students, etc., who must be selected as well as defined very cautiously and thoroughly. Experimental and control groups is another concept in research design. While taking up a research study with the application of experimental design, generally one group, that is a few persons in social science research or very few blocks or plots in agricultural research, is exposed to the treatment or intervention, which is known as the experimental group. On the other hand, one group is likely to be selected which has similar characteristics, that is usual conditions of those included in the experimental group, but they or these are not exposed to the treatment or intervention, which is known as a control group. Such groups will be taken into consideration when we want to do an experimental hypothesis testing research. Treatments is another concept in research design. These can be defined as the different types of conditions under which the experimental and control groups are put. In social science research, usually one treatment or intervention is mostly used. The examples may be training program, mass media campaigns, counseling, teaching method, treatment for drug addiction, etc. are some of the examples for treatments. Generally, treatments are given to the members or plots of the experimental group so as to understand the changes, if any, occur in the members or plots of this group is to be attributed to the treatment given. Another major concept in research design is experimental and non-experimental hypothesis testing research. Generally, a research aims at investigating a research hypothesis which is known as the hypothesis testing research. The majority of the social science research is hypothesis driven. However, such hypothesis can be based on experimental or non-experimental designs. A research in which the dependent variable is manipulated is known as experimental hypothesis testing research, while the research in which an independent variable is not manipulated is known as the non-experimental hypothesis testing research. Another major concept in research design is manipulation. In experimental designs, the researcher will mostly try to examine the cause and effect relationship between one or more independent variables and one dependent variable. In this process, the researchers sometimes make changes in the experiment by changing an independent variable and see whether any differential change occurred in the dependent variable. At that point of time, the variable that changed by the researcher is known as the manipulated variable. When the researchers manipulate this variable, it is called manipulation. Some of the major advantages of research designs are: it directs the researcher to prepare himself to adhere and execute the various activities in a systematic manner. It enables resource planning procurement at the right time. It ensures that the research project time schedule will be maintained as well as saves a lot of the researcher's time. It helps for better documentation of the activities while the research project is in progress. It also provides satisfaction and sense of success from the beginning to the completion of every stage of the project. In sum, in this module, a detailed discussion is made about the research design and its related aspects, such as meaning and objectives of research design, major objectives of research design, concepts related to research design, and advantages of research design. Thank you.